Tell we do something for Golden Country and go back to work. That's a good one right there. I'm gonna kick your butt, Sitch. Can you threaten to kick me in a funny way? At 59, Rick Harrison finds himself trapped in a whirlwind of family chaos and legal battles. What started as a rumor about his son receiving a life sentence has been confirmed, sending shock waves through the Pawn Stars fanbase. As the fame of Pawn Stars fades, Rick struggles to hold on to the remnants of his once thriving legacy. Tune in as the unraveling of this empire takes an even darker turn, one that no one saw coming. The rise and fall of a pawn shop empire. First off, Pawn Stars was not just some random family-run business that lucked out. Rick, alongside his late father Richard, turned a dusty pawn shop into a household name. Richard was the old-school guy, tough as nails, who knew the value of a buck and did not mess around. Fans loved his non-nonsense attitude, and when he passed away in 2018, it was like the heart of the shop went with him. But the hustler, ever determined, kept the business rolling even when things started getting rocky. But behind the busy counters and friendly smiles, a secret waited to surface, one that could change everything Rick had worked to build before the television fame. Running a pawn shop in Las Vegas was not all glamour. The businessman dealt with late payments, tight margins, and more drama than he would care to admit. Great father, you know I had epilepsy when I was a kid. He did not treat me one bit different because of it. When I was 12 years old, it was 5:30 in the morning, Saturday morning. Get out of bed, grab your nail bags. Still he knew the secreto. Pawning, it is not just about the stuff, it is about the stories. People don't just want to buy an antique, they want to buy a piece of history, a tale that comes with it. That is what made Pawn Stars work. The weird, wild items and the even wilder tales that came with them. When Pawn Stars hit the airwaves in 2009, nobody could have guessed how big it would get. Suddenly the dealer, his son Corey, and their buddy Chumley were television stars, haggling over everything from ancient coins to pirates' words. People loved watching the Traderdo, his thing. Loved the back and forth between him and his son, and especially loved Chumley's goofy antics. But fame has a funny way of messing things up behind the scenes. Things were less shiny. Lawsuits started piling up and family attentions spilled out into the public. In 2022, the shopkeeper's mother Joanne took him to court over ownership of the shop. She claimed he tricked her into signing over her share of the business while she was recovering from a coma years ago. He, on the other hand, insisted she knew exactly what she was doing. The lawsuit demanded an accounting of more than $500,000 and even asked for a restraining order to stop the PWN broker from selling off assets. If that was not bad enough, the pandemic hit them hard. With tourism down, the pawn shop's profits tanked. Reports said they barely made $37,000 that year, a far cry from their usual million plus. You feel awkward for about the first 2 years, and then it goes away. You tell them you know now, that you forget that they're even there. It is like everything that could go wrong was going wrong. And there is Chumley. The guy might have been the comic relief on the show, but off camera he was in trouble. In 2016, police raided his house during a sexual assault investigation. While those charges did not stick, they found enough drugs and unregistered guns to charge him with multiple felonies. He eventually struck a plea deal, avoiding jail, but not the damage to his reputation. Fans were stunned, and the show took a hit. Corey, the heir to the pawn shop, did not exactly stay out of trouble either. He had a wild streak, getting into bar fights and making headlines for all the wrong reasons. In 2020, he rented a recreational vehicle for a desert trip only to wreck it and allegedly refused to pay for the damages the owner claimed. Corey left the vehicle trashed with empty bottles and food everywhere. It was another public relations nightmare for the family. And let us not forget the scandals involving the experts featured on the show. Some of them, like Johnny Jimenez Jr., faced legal issues of their own. In 2015, Johnny was accused of domestic violence, tarnishing his reputation. Then there was Drew Max, a sports memorabilia expert who got caught up in a fraud scandal. He allegedly authenticated fake items that were later sold at auction, leading to lawsuits and a huge hit to the show's credibility. Over time, fans started noticing that Pawn Stars was not the same anymore. The once spontaneous and fun started feeling scripted. Sellers were pre-selected and the appraisals seemed staged. The family banter that viewers loved felt more forced, and the focus shifted from cool historical items to personal drama. It was not about the pawn shop anymore, it was about the Harrison and their troubles. Even the dealer's attempt to branch out with Pawn Plaza, a retail complex near the shop, did not go as planned. Many of the businesses there shut down, blaming him for were not promoting the area enough. Lawsuits followed, and the whole venture ended up being more trouble than it was worth. Through all of this, the entrepreneur kept hustling. This was just a few months ago. Corey and my dad were just bantering back and forth, and Corey goes, "I'll give you $1,000 if you can send me a text message." He knew the television show would not last forever, so he diversified his investments, getting into real estate and other ventures. Still, with all the legal battles, family drama, and declining viewership, it is clear that the golden days of porn stars are long gone. What started as a simple pawn shop run by a hardworking family turned into a global sensation, only to be bogged down by scandal after scandal, whether it be lawsuits from family members, criminal charges against cast members, or controversies surrounding their experts. They have seen it all, and while the head of business might have built an empire, keeping it from crumbling is proving to be the real challenge. The troubles did not end there. Back in the early 2010s, another family scandal made headlines when a large coin collection went missing. David Walters, an angry relative, accused the dealer of melting down a stash of rare coins that had been stolen by Walters' niece. The whole thing spiraled into another lawsuit, with Walters demanding compensation and claiming the coins were worth nearly $50,000. The trader denied any wrongdoing, insisting that the pawn shop followed proper procedures when buying the coins. This was not the only case of shady dealings tied to the shop. Around the same time, allegations surfaced about prearranged appraisals on the show. Fans began to speculate that some of the supposed spontaneous negotiations were anything but real, while the producers never outright admitted to staging scenes. Several former employees hinted that much of the action was heavily guided to make better television. Meanwhile, the shop owner tried to keep expanding his business portfolio. He opened restaurants and souvenir shops, betting on the porn stars brand to pull in crowds, yet not everything turned to gold. Several ventures shut down after just a few years, with critics saying he underestimated how difficult it was to run such businesses. By 2021, it was clear that porn stars was no longer the cultural phenomenon it once was. Viewership had dropped significantly, and the original charm that drew audiences seemed to have faded quite a bit. More about the artwork into this. I'm not Anet Guy at all. I called him and he's on his way down here to check it out. Okay, the show kept airing new episodes, but even diehard fans admitted it did not have the same magic for the businessman. It was a double-edged sword. While the show gave him fame and fortune, it also exposed his family's dirty laundry to the world. Chumlee, despite his legal troubles, remained a prominent figure in the series. He attempted to clean up his image by focusing on weight loss and healthier living. At one point, he even opened a candy shop near the pawn shop, hoping to leverage his fanbase. The shop did okay for a while, but just like many of the dealer's ventures, it eventually closed its doors. Corey also tried to shift the narrative around him after his highly publicized weight loss surgery. He became an advocate for healthier living. Hefton spoke about the challenges of being in the public eye and the pressures that came with it, yet no matter how much he tried, Corey could not completely shake off the controversies that seemed to follow him. Even with all the drama, there was no denying the impact porn stars had on pop culture. The show introduced millions of viewers to the world of porning, turning what was once a niche business into mainstream entertainment. It brought history to life in a way that was both educational and entertaining. Even if it eventually lost its way despite its decline, porn stars continued to draw tourists to Las Vegas, fans from around the world flocked to the gold and silver pawn shop, hoping to catch a glimpse of the trader or one of the other cast members. The shop, now more of a tourist attraction than a functioning PWN business, became a symbol of the show's legacy. The businessman, ever the opportunist, found ways to keep the brand alive. He launched merchandise line, signed autographs for fans, and made guest appearances at events. Even as the lawsuits piled up and the controversies grew, he managed to maintain a loyal following for the dealer. It was all about staying relevant and finding new ways to monetize the porn stars brand. By the mid-2020s, it seemed that the Harrison family had weathered the worst of the storm. The lawsuits with Joanne were settled quietly, and while the details were never made public, it was clear that both sides wanted to move on. Chumlee stayed out of further legal trouble, focusing on rebuilding his personal life. Corey continued working at the shop, though he kept a lower profile compared to his earlier years. With the family drama simmering down, the shop gears up for some unusual visitors and unforgettable moments. Fame, fandom, and high stack steals the whole scene in Porn Stars. With Steve Carell starts off pretty ordinary, but things get weird fast in a good way. The Vegas-based shop has had tons of celebrities pop by, but when a guy shows up looking a lot like the star of The Office, things take an amusing turn. He looks like Carell, acts funny like Carell, but insists he isn't. Carell Rick can't resist approaching him to find out. Turns out it's just a hilarious misunderstanding. Carell's doppelganger has some good comedic timing of his own, keeping Rick and the team entertained. The real highlight of this visit happens when the mystery man, who might as well be Carell's twin, shows interest in a World War II diver's knife. Rick is quick to present the piece, and right away the guy starts joking about its multi-purpose design: knife, bottle opener, corkscrew, and billy club. A underneath banter flows naturally, making for a moment that could have been scripted for a sitcom. In Classic porn star style. A price negotiation follows. Rick initially suggests a fair market value of $2,500. The faux Carell, never missing a beat, offers a ridiculously high $4,000, clearly just to keep the humor going. Rick plays along and the negotiation becomes more of a comedy than a serious transaction. Eventually the knife stays unsold, but everyone walks away grinning. Later, Mick Foley, the wrestling legend, steps into the shop carrying some vintage memorabilia, a Dude Love t-shirt and a Mankind mask, both signed. Rick and Chumlee light up at the sight of these items, especially when they learn the pieces are autographed by Foley himself. Chumlee, being the wrestling enthusiast he is, dives into a mini history lesson about Foley's multiple personas, Mankind, Dudlow, and Cactus Jack. When Rick asks for a price, the seller suggests $500 for both items. As usual, Rick isn't going to buy without verifying the authenticity of the signatures. Foley, being a good sport, sticks around while Chumlee calls in a friend who knows wrestling collectibles. To everyone's surprise, Foley himself agrees to inspect the items. He confirms the mask and t-shirt are legit, adding a bit of backstory about how limited the Dude Love shirts were because of the high cost of tie-dye production. He tries to close the deal for $200, but the seller decided rather keep the items, especially after meeting Foley in person. You know what, I'm going to play along. How about $550, $500, $3,200? That's the deal. Onanatha episode. Stan Lee, the legendary comic book creator, makes a cameo appearance. A customer brings in an original Spider-Man comic strip from the 70s signed by both Stan Lee and artist John Romita. The strip features a scene with Mary Jane and Spider-Man that's a bit risk for its time. Mary Jane is in a bathtub inviting Spidey over. Intrigued, Rick knows this piece is valuable, but the seller's asking price of $10,000 seems steep. Chumlee, eager to impress Rick, suggests taking the strip to the Marvel Avengers station in Vegas for authentication. At the station, Chumlee meets with an expert who confirms the signatures are genuine. The seller tries to hold firm on the $10,000 price tag, but Rick, ever the negotiator, counts terse with $3,500. After some back and forth, they settle on $5,000, with Chumlee beaming. Having brokered the deal. Meeting Stan Lee was undoubtedly the highlight of this episode, giving fans a memorable crossover between pop culture and history. Dana White, the president of Ultimate Fighting Championship, makes a bold appearance in Season 15, Episode 17. He is on the hunt for something unique to add to his growing weapons collection. Chumlee and Corey show him several antique swords, but it is a restored 15th century samurai sword that catches Dana's eye. Rick gives a detailed history of the blade, explaining its ties to a samurai family and the costly restoration it underwent in Japan. Their asking price is $40,000. Dana, always ready for a fight, counters with $28,000. Rick does not budge, and after some tense negotiation, Dana agrees to $35,000, but he is not done yet. Spotting more swords in the shop, Dana offers another $30,000 for the lot. Chumlee and Corey, thrilled with the massive sala, start packing up the swords. Rick, however, is not too pleased when he finds out they sold the samurai sword he had explicitly told them not to sell in their end. Dana walks away with a $69,000 haul, and he can only shake his head at the unexpected windfall. Finally, in one of the earlier seasons, Chumlee has a run-in with the reclusive music legend Bob Dylan. It all starts when a customer brings in a copy of Dylan's self-portrait album, hoping to sell it. Rick offers $50, noting the album's condition is not pristine, but he has an idea: if they can get Dylan to sign it, the value could skyrocket. Tasked with tracking down Dylan, who is in town for a concert, Chumlee takes to the streets of Vegas. Against all odds, he finds Dylan and manages to get the autograph back at the shop. Chumlee proudly presents the signed album to Rick, however, instead of just signing his name, Dylan personalized it with a message to Chumlee diminishing its resale value. He is less than thrilled, but Chumlee is over the moon, having met one of his idols. Porn stars has a knack for mixing humor, history and celebrity appearances in a way that keeps viewers hooked, whether it is mistaken identities, legendary wrestlers, comic book icons or reclusive musicians. The show knows how to turn ordinary pawnshop transactions into unforgettable moments. Steve Carell's lookalike might not have bought the diver's knife, but his visit to the shop gave everyone a good laugh. Even though the knife was not sold, it turned into one of those memorable encounters that make the show unique. The same can be said about Mick Foley's appearance. The seller might have walked away with his signed memorabilia, but fans of wrestling got to see an entertaining segment involving one of their favorite superstars. The Stan Lee episode stands out because it combined the world of comics with history, which is exactly what Porn Stars is known for. Stan Lee's signature on the Spider-Man strip added a significant amount of value to the piece. Chumlee's excitement at meeting Lee was palpable, making it clear that even after years of working at the shop, meeting a legend like Stan Lee is a big deal. Dana White's visit was an not just because of the Massive amount of money involved, but also because it showed how the shop handled high-end buyers selling a samurai sword for $35,000 and then adding another $30,000 for the rest of the swords is no small feat. He used to give these out he'd scratch little things on a card sign it and this one's even dated January 1900. Cool, it's a great piece. Ofadvis Rick's reaction to finding out about the sale added a bit of humor tone. Already exciting episode. Chumley's quest to find Bob Dylan and get his autograph was a classic example of how the show blends humor and history. Even though the signed album did not turn out to be as valuable as Rick had hoped, it gave viewers a fun story and a look at Chumley's determination. Their interaction with Steve Carell's lookalike was one of those quirky moments that only happen on Pawn Stars. Rick's decision to approach the man and find out if he was really Carell turned into an amusing exchange that kept viewers entertained. The fact that the man ended up joking about buying a World War II diver's knife only added to the humor of the situation. Mick Foley's visit to the shop was a treat for wrestling fans, seeing Chumley geek out over Foley's memorabilia and hearing Foley talk about his wrestling personas made for an engaging segment. The fact that Foley himself verified the authenticity of the items added a layer of credibility to the transaction. Stan Lee's appearance on the show was a major event, having a customer bring in a Spider-Man comic strip signed by both Lee and Romita was a rare occurrence. The segment highlighted the shop's expertise in dealing with high-value collectibles and showed how they go the extra mile to authenticate items. Meeting Stan Lee was the cherry on top for Chumley, who could barely contain his excitement. Dana White's purchase of the samurai sword was one of the biggest sales in the show's history. The negotiation process was tense but entertaining, with Dana pushing hard for a better deal and Rick holding his ground. The fact that Dana ended up buying multiple swords for a total of $669,000 made it one of the most memorable episodes. Chumley's adventuretto find Bob Dylan and get his autograph was both funny and impressive. Despite the odds, he managed to track down Dylan and get him to sign the album. The personalized message from Dylan might not have increased the album's value, but it gave Chumley a story to tell for years to come. Even pros can get it wrong sometimes. What comes next are stories of deals that didn't go as planned, costly gambles and counterfeit goods. Rick and his crew over at the pawn shop might be veterans in the trade, but that doesn't mean they haven't gotten burned by bad deals now and then. 14 years of experience and plenty of price lessons still haven't kept the team from being duped by a few fakes. First off, there was this time someone waltzed in with a book supposedly signed by Joe Jackson. Now Jackson's signature is the holy grail for baseball collectors. Problem is he didn't know how to write. Most of the signed stuff attributed to him actually signed by his wife, but the seasoned pawnbroker, despite knowing that, thought he spotted something rare. He figured even if it was a gamble it was worth the shot. After some back and forth, the shop leader decided to fork over $113,000. That's right, 13 grand for what the hoped was a legit Shoeless Joe autograph. But once the guy walked out with his cash, the boss thought it was wise to call in an actual expert. Bad news, the signature wasn't real. Turns out had gambled big and lost not exactly a home run. Then there was the Kobe Bryant warm-up jersey incident. A guy brought in what he claimed was a game-used Kobe jersey from the 2010 finals. It had Kobe's number and all the right patches, and on top of that it was signed. The seller wanted $25,000 for it. Staff was impressed but knew they needed an expert's take before dropping that kind of cash. When the expert showed up, things took a turn. Sure, the jersey was real, but it wasn't game used, just game issued, which made it way less valuable. Instead of being worth 25 grand, their expert valued it at around 15,000. The crew wasn't feeling that price, so the deal didn't go through. Fun fact, after Kobe's tragic passing, similar jersey skyrocketed in value to over $200,000. Talk about a missed opportunity. Comic books were another weak spot for the shop. One day a woman named Chelsea came in with 7 boxes of old comics. The eager employee, always looking top rove himself, jumped on the chance without flipping through every comic or calling in an expert. He offered Chelsea $500 for the lot. He figured he might find a hidden gem or two. Turns out most of the comics were worth next to nothing. After hauling the boxes in, the senior members were less than thrilled. An expert later confirmed that while there were a few valuable issues, they did come close to covering what their employee had paid. Another day, another loss. Remember that supposed Indian vest from the 1890s? A customer showed up claiming it was an authentic Sioux ceremonial vest, thinking it looked legit. The team leader paid $1,300 for it. If this thing I legit, it is definitely worth money, and I know the exact guy who can give me that info. He didn't bother calling in an expert beforehand, which, spoiler alert, Heshold have done once. The vest Got checked out. It turned out to be a reproduction made for tourists, not something worn by Native Americans over a century ago. That mistake cost him big time, and who could forget the Napoleon letter some guy brought in a framed letter claiming it was signed by Napoleon himself. The younger associate, thinking he was on Tosamething special, negotiated a deal and bought it for $2,000. He was feeling pretty confident about his find until the boss insisted on getting it authenticated. An expert took one look and pointed out the glaring issues. The letter was a replica, not an original. The associate's $2,000 investment worthless. Lesson learned: don't skip the expert check. Speaking of music, a seller brought in what he claimed was a vintage Gibson mandolin. The same eager employee, remembering how much his manager loved instruments, figured he'd impress the boss by buying it on the spot. He negotiated the price down to $1,500 and sealed the deal, but when the shop's leader called in an expert, things went south fast. The mandolin turned out to be a knockoff with several incorrect features, like a decal that Gibson never used. The $1,500 gamble turned into a complete bust touch. Then there was the Cy Young baseball card debacle. A guy walked in with a beat-up card from 199 featuring the legendary pitcher Cy Young. The former baseball card enthusiast couldn't resist. He haggled the seller down from $1,000 to $300, thinking he might still turn a profit. When he finally got the card looked at, the expert confirmed it was authentic, but in such poor condition that it was barely worth $200. The gamble didn't pay off, leaving him out $100. Finally, let's talk about those 6 fake Rolex watches the younger associate bought during his early days working the night shift. Thinking he was making savvy deals, he shelled out $4,000 for 6 watches, all of which turned out to be counterfeit. The boss wasn't too pleased when he found out, and the night shift rookie got a crash course in why it's crucial to get high-end items authenticated before buying. It wasn't just watches and jerseys either. The younger associate once tried to buy a Wee May baseball uniform for $31,000 after an expert confirmed it was real. Unfortunately, while the uniform was authentic, it wasn't game-worn, making it worth far less than expected. Worse still, the uniform was later revealed to be a complete fake and ended up selling at auction for only $119,000. That's a $112,000 loss he had to eat to finish. Here's a simple question: should sellers of fake items get tougher punishment, or should buyers be more careful? To share your thoughts, like this post and subscribe for more.